Ascertain the results. On this question, there being 27 yeas, 7 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 686, exempting contract and common carrier laws for certain vehicles. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 686 authorizes the Public Service Commission to allow the use of emergency substitute carrier to provide service when the certificate or permit of the regular carrier is suspended. The committee substitute resolves issues with taxi service for train crews and is the result of a compromise and agreement between the Public Service Commission and the stakeholders involved. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 719, imposing healthcare-related provider tax on certain healthcare organizations. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Recognize the senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purposes of this bill, it's a bill actually we do every year, is to impose a tiered tax on the HMOs in a matter that permits the maximization of federal matching dollars in order to use the Medicaid program. This tax was extended until the year 2023. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Recognize the senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of this. This is certainly one way to increase the amount of funding we have for Medicaid population. And again, in the expanded Medicaid population, the federal government pays us 9-to-1 match, and in the traditional Medicaid population, it's 3-to-1. So if we're going to be able to provide oral health care and things like that to our poor West Virginians, this is certainly a potential vehicle to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2020, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
The junior senator from 17th moves that the bill be made effective July 1, 2020, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2020. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 740, clarifying authorized users of Ron Yost Personal Assistance Services Fund. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 740 clarifies what the authorized uses of funds for administrating the Ron Yost Personal Assistance Service Program. The code authorizes funds to be used for programs under the article, but does not specify what these programs are. This bill inserts the specific program name in order to eliminate any potential confusion. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 747, requiring Bureau for Public Health develop diabetes action plan. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Recognize the senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This legislature, we formed a diabetes coalition last year, and as a result of that coalition, this bill arose. This bill requires that the Bureau of Public Health to create a diabetes action plan and details the components of that plan, which would include stakeholder meetings and drafting long and short-term goals. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Senator from Marion. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 748, increasing awareness of palliative care services. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Recognize Senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Similar to the last bill, this legislature also formed a palliative care coalition in the past, and as a result of that coalition came this bill. This bill requires the State Advisory Coalition on Palliative Care, in conjunction with the Bureau of Public Health, to develop a work group to create the content of educational materials regarding palliative care for distribution to the providers. The materials should provide an overview of palliative care services and the interdisciplinary team. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Every member voted. If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 767, relating to licensure of hospitals. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires the Department of Health and Human Resources to grant an exemption from periodic license inspection during the year following accreditation if the hospital submits evidence by enumerated accrediting organizations, including any organization approved by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, along with the accrediting report. The second portion of the bill repeals a requirement related to the hospital board composition. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed Committee Substitute for House Bill 4026, exempting businesses transporting scrap tires, waste tires, or other used tires from certain statutory provisions. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4026 amends a single section of code to exempt businesses that transport scrap tires from needing a certificate of convenience and a necessity or a permit from the Public Service Commission to do so. The vehicles used would still be subject to laws and regulations of the Division of Motor Vehicles and Safety and Insurance rules of the PSC. This has nothing to do with the disposal of the tires, and currently there's only 2 licensed haulers in West Virginia, and this kind of gets rid of some regulation to allow more businesses and trucking companies to be able to haul tires. I will entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 4501 relating to the ability to refuse offenders for commitment to a jail. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4501 addresses what happens when people who are otherwise to be jailed are in need of medical attention. The bill, as we amended it yesterday on the floor, amends 2 sections of existing code and repeals 1 section. But under current law, under Chapter 15A, a jail is authorized to refuse admission to somebody who is in need of medical attention when they arrive at the jail. The bill will add new language, subsection B, that gives immunity, protection from liability to correctional officers, Division of Corrections, if a person who shows up in jail and appears to be in need of some medical assistance or attention, if the person refuses medical attention. So this bill says that in that circumstance, if they refuse to a medical professional, the facility can take them into custody and be protected from liability as a result of having taken them in that condition. Be happy to try to answer questions, Mr. President. Otherwise, I urge the bill's passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on the Judiciary move to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Recognize the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the bill be made effective on passage. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage, the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 33 yeas, 1 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there additional bills on 3rd reading?
No, sir.
Bills on 2nd reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 291 requiring PEI and health insurance providers provide mental health parity. 2nd reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 502 relating to methamphetamine criminal penalties. 2nd reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading.
Senate Bill 562 expunging certain criminal convictions. 2nd reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading.
Senate Bill 610 removing resident manager requirement for Alcohol Beverage Control Administration. 2nd reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Trump moved to amend the bill on pages 1 through 6.
Recognize the senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Senator from Morgan County requests unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read and that all amendments be considered as one. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, Senate Bill 610, is designed to bring West Virginia into compliance with a United States Supreme Court decision rendered in the Tennessee Wine and Spirits case. The amendment is a strike and insert amendment for Section 3, but it contains only staff-suggested technical amendments. I urge the amendment's adoption.
Is there further discussion? If not, question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as explained by the senator from Morgan. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 692, clarifying persons indicted or charged jointly for felony offense can move to have separate trials. 2nd reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading. Are there further bills on 2nd reading?
No, sir.
Bills on 1st reading. Recognize junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm requesting unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advance to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members of the Senate. Recognize the junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to follow up on remarks I had made yesterday about the nearly 500,000 needles from IV drug users that have been scattered across the state of West Virginia by our local health departments under DHHR. These harm reduction programs are designed to reduce harm, so to reduce the prevalence of HIV, Hep C, Hep B, and to also get people into treatment. So how effective has our leadership within DHHR been in actually facilitating that reduction? When you look at the number of participant visits that these programs have had relative to how many tests they actually do. In the month of October, for instance, in 2019, and this is fairly consistent when you go out month to month throughout 2019, they had about a little over 3,500 participant visits, but did about 400 tests for HIV, which is about 10%, 10% or a little bit less, a little more. For hepatitis B, it was 2%. And for hepatitis C, about 8%. So 90% or more of the people that are hitting these visits are not getting tested. This is not harm reduction. This is risk. This is risk to anybody who's walking through and inadvertently sticks themselves with a needle that was used by an IV drug user scattered out amongst our state. So, you know, for an example, Mr. President, if your senators would reach in the right hand of their desk, they might find one of these needles we've been able to pick up. I don't see anybody reaching. I wonder why. Well, I've got something that I brought that, again, that somebody called me to speak to me about the problem that they have right down next to Marshall University, which I'm sure you have somebody in your family that is probably going to Marshall. You probably have somebody that's going to WVU because we have a program up there as well. So what level of risk should a father accept in West Virginia, or a mother, to send their child to one of our state universities when we fund this kind of problem? So I'm going to read this, and this is from Frank Schuler, MD, PhD, professor of orthopedic trauma, professor of pediatrics, and vice chairman of Marshall Orthopedics. So he called me and expressed some of his experiences that he's had there near Marshall University in Huntington relative to needle exchange. And I asked him, I said, can you put that in writing for me? And he sent me a one-page letter that I want to share with the members. I have been asked by Senator Eric TARR to provide additional insight on the effects of discarded needles in the community. I am a physician, a small business owner, philanthropist, distinguished mountaineer, and a proud father. I have presented at the American Medical Association in Washington, D.C. on needle sticks with no aspect of my life that has not been impacted by the opioid epidemic and the resulting unsafe environment it produces. Several key items are highlighted below, and he also sent photos, but you won't have the photos in front of you. So number one, he says, due to the drug epidemic, our region is number one in the country for hepatitis C conversion per the CDC. This dramatically impacts my life as an orthopedic traumatologist, where I'm at risk of exposure and conversion at every patient encounter. I have personally seen the effect on colleagues where careers were ruined and lives impacted permanently. I own a small business immediately behind Cabell Huntington Hospital and the Ronald McDonald House in Huntington. This area was number one for drug activity in Huntington, and he provided a heat map that showed the drug activity that verifies that. The result of this drug activity is numerous improperly discarded needles. These environmental, he has in quotes, needles, pose threats to all and directly impacted me and my family in the following ways. I personally paid a substantial amount of money to remove an abandoned crack home in that neighborhood and immediately next to my small business. The expanding drug activity has produced an economically depressed neighborhood with conversions of homes into parking lots and the loss of small businesses' potential. I had my children. This is part you want to pay attention to. This matters if you have kids that are anywhere near these horrendously operated needle exchanges. I had my children help clean the property of my small business, and they found numerous needles, and we stopped due to fear of exposure. This is really unfortunate because I was teaching them the value of hard work and their first paycheck, which is $22, for that business, and it was their last, due to improperly discarded needles. The other effect was that the lawn service needed to be hired to address that issue at the property, cost over $12,000 over the years that he operated it. That took that business was enough to go from black into red. The discarded needles were a proximate cause, and he all put this in all caps. The discarded needles were the proximate cause which prevented the donation of one parcel of that property to the Ronald McDonald House for the establishment of Maggie's Playground. There is no aspect of community life that is not impacted by the opioid epidemic and discarded needles. From needles in our parks and our play areas to the dramatic effects on those exposed as part of health care and first response. We cannot expect needle users to behave rationally, so oversight and accountability are needed to curtail the downstream effects. A uniform statewide system is needed as a key aspect to address this multifaceted problem. Harm reduction is critical, with recovery the ultimate goal. So, Mr. President, as you know, I've done some visiting over the past year. Visiting Western Regional Jail, spent the day in there, got to go through general population. I went through their goals program down there, as I mentioned earlier, spent the day at Cabell Huntington Hospital. And also went to, last year, went to Recovery Point, going through and trying to see what is it as we as legislators can actually do. And some of the comments I've made is, the things that we really need to do, I don't think that the legislature has the guts to do it. I know we don't have the resources to do it to make the impact that's needed. So I looked for what's the most egregious things that are happening that we can actually have an impact on. What's the lowest hanging fruit? We passed one of those measures out of here this week, which had to do with long-acting reversible contraception. This measure, the most egregious, that we use our taxpayer money to fund to support the drug activity that happens around these needle exchanges, is just insane to me that we've not addressed it. Our health committee this year, for all the heavy lifts we've had, that's, while important to some people, I would imagine that requiring the Bureau for Public Health to develop a diabetes action plan, develop an action plan. You would think DHHR would have an action plan for diabetes, but we had to legislate that. To ask that DHHR increase the awareness of palliative care services. We had to run legislation for that, and that was a big heavy lift we had in our health committee. To establish an advisory council on rare diseases. To continue the Office of Drug Control Policy. And they came and presented to the health committee, but no legislation was recommended, but we listened to them. Those were some of the big heavy lifts. So if you look at some of the things that we actually did to address this opioid epidemic, but let this go, here's what some of the dramatic impact we took on. We listened to the presentation from ODCP and required pharmacists to query the Controlled Substance Monitoring Program. I would ask that whatever time is left, that we actually do something that matters. That, Mr. President, the legislation's out there. We know the problem, and we've had experts tell us how to fix it. It's up to us to listen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Remarks by members. Other members desiring to speak under remarks. Recognize the senator from Harrison County.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I request unanimous consent to return to the second order of business.
Senator requests unanimous consent to return to the 11th order of business. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you for
Introduction
correcting
again.
that. I stand up with a bit of apologies because it's so important that our pages come down here and join us. And today we have 2 pages on behalf of myself and my senior senator from Braxton, Amelia Johnson, and her father is here, Jeremy Johnson, and Jacob Basil's here with his mother, Leslie Pratt. Will they please stand and be recognized by the Senate? Thank you, Mr. President.
Further introductions? Further remarks by members? Miscellaneous business. Recognize the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Other announcements. The chair has an announcement. I will appoint Senator Weld as vice chair of the Committee on Education. He will be replacing Senator Blair. Are there further announcements? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. in the Judiciary Committee Room 208 West Wing.
Further announcements? Recognize the senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Committee will meet this afternoon in I'm too excited, excuse me. Your Finance Committee will meet this afternoon at 3 p.m. at room 451M, and the agenda has been posted, and we will also meet tomorrow morning at 9:30 and 451M as well, and the agenda will be posted by the time we get finished our day-to-day up there. Thank you.
Further announcements? The senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure will meet in the morning at 9 o'clock in 208 West. We have a short agenda, and hopefully it will not interfere with the finance meeting.
Further announcements? Further announcements. Recognize Senator from Morgan County or Senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Pensions will meet for what should be a short meeting at 2 p.m. in room 451M.
Further announcements. The senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet in 30 minutes from now at 115 208 West.
Further announcements. Recognize Senator from Morgan County again.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will also meet tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the Judiciary Committee Room 208 West Wing.
Are there further announcements? Further announcements. The recognized senator from Wetzel County.
I questioned my thoughts of whether I announced a meeting was in 208 West, which is different from where we normally meet.
Thank you for the clarification. Are there further announcements? Not. The question for the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.
Those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and all members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor John Estes. He is the guest of the gentleman of the 19th, Douglas Hicks.
Today we will pray an adaptation of President Abraham Lincoln's proclamation for the National Day of Humiliation, Fasting, and Prayer that he spoke 1863, 3 months before the founding of this state. Bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, whereas it is the duty of nations as well as of men to owe our dependence upon the overruling power of God, to confess our sins and transgressions in humble sorrow, yet with assured hope that genuine repentance will lead to mercy and pardon, and to recognize the sublime truth announced in the Holy Scriptures and proven by all history, that those nations only are blessed whose God is the Lord. Father God, in so much as we now know that by your divine law, nations like individuals are subjected to punishments and chastisements in this world, may we not justly fear that the awful calamities that we have faced throughout our nation's history may be but a punishment inflicted upon us for our presumptuous sins. to the needful end of our national reformation as a whole people. We have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. Lord, you have preserved us these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, power as no other nation has ever grown, oh God, but we have forgotten you. We have forgotten your gracious hand which preserves us in peace and multiplies and rich and strengthens us, and have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts, Lord, that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and persevering grace, too proud to pray to God that made us. It behooves us then to humble ourselves before you, O Lord, the offended power, to confess our sins and to pray for clemency and forgiveness. Then, O Lord, will you bless this nation? Lord, will you bless this great state of West Virginia? Today, Lord, will you grant wisdom, clarity, and a measure of grace to every man and woman in this room as they carry out their role in leadership on behalf of the residents of this great state. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. All members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning by the gentleman of the 19th, Doug Hicks.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow delegates and guests, please join us in prayer as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Tuesday, February 18th, 2020.
The Gentleman of the 53rd, Delegate Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
The gentleman of the 53rd, Delegate Jennings, asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Introduction of guests. Lady in the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery today, I have joining me my nursing colleagues from the West Virginia Board of Nursing, Dr. Tara Halsley, President, and Dr. Sue Painter, Executive Director. If they'd stand, the House make them welcome.
The gentleman of the 11th, Delegate Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have visiting with us a couple special people in my life, my wife Jeanette and my grandson Lennox. If they'd please stand and the House make them welcome.
The gentleman of the 16th, Delegate Mant.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Soft Drink Day, and I think we all partake in those at some point in the day. I know our speaker takes part in a few of those throughout the day. And that's something that we enjoy. And I tell you, we've got Lindsay Smith and Sean Statler from Cabell County. Lindsay and Sean work for PepsiCo. Lindsay is the general manager, while Sean is the vending manager. Would the House stand and please make them feel welcome? Thank you.
Lady in the 3rd, Delegate Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Fluharty, Canestraro, Zukoff, and I are very pleased to have in the North Gallery 8th graders from Our Lady of Peace School. They are escorted by Father Joseph, Renee Schneid, one of their instructors, and my sister-in-law, Maureen Kerr. I'd ask them to stand and the House please make them welcome.
The gentleman of the 46th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to announce the doctor of the day. Since the gentleman from the 45th yesterday said, the gentleman that delivered me and him, Dr. Joseph Reed. If the House would please make him feel welcome.
The gentleman of the 21st, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today are third-year apprentices from Carpenter's Local 439. These young men are representing Mingo County, Summers, Mason, Cabell, Kanawha, and Wood County, and they're joined with former delegate Scott Brewer. If you would, please give them a hand.
The gentleman in the 12th, Doug Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a page with us today from Ripley Middle School. If he will stand when I call his name, it's Trey Greer. He is an 8th grader from Ripley Middle School with a house. Give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 39th, Doug Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to welcome some pages from the Sissonville Middle School. Nick, and if you'll stand, please, Nick Slate, and he is accompanied by his mother, Christina Slate, and his grandmother, Connie Hill, in the gallery. Also, Trent McCoy is here, if Trent will stand, and his mother, Angie, is in the gallery. And then Alec Landgrebe is here, and he'll stand. And his mother's always here, right down front, the assistant to the clerk there, and we appreciate all these folks being with us today. Give them a warm welcome, please, House. Thank you.
The gentleman in the 58th, Doug Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I notice up in the West Gallery, all the way down from Morgan County, is Ken Reed, a local pharmacist who's here to talk today about PBMs and how we might help local pharmacies. So if Ken Reed will stand up, and the House will make him welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman in the 42nd, Doug Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Lavender Bowe and I, we've got one page here with us today and two introductions. If he'll stand when I call his name, from Eastern Greenbrier Middle School, Braden Teeney, and he's brought here today in the South Gallery by his mother, Stacy Teeney. Also in our South Gallery, we have some students from Greenbrier West High School. If they'll stand when I call their name, Alexis Sloan, Frank Workman, C.J. Lauk, and Karan Childress. They're brought here by their teacher, Peggy Mullins. Will the House please make them welcome?
The gentleman the 17th, Doug Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've got some extraordinary kids here today. And on behalf of your Cabell County delegation, I'm going to ask to introduce them if they'd stand. We got my buddy James St. Clair, his sister Daisy St. Clair, and an exchange student from Italy named Federico Bandello, who's with us today. In the West Gallery, they're joined by their chaperone. That's Joan St. Clair. She's the principal of Studio 8 in Huntington, just celebrated their 8th anniversary. So House, please make them feel welcome.
The gentleman the 2nd, Doug DeCerio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today in the South Gallery, we have active and retired members of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local Union 625 of Charleston, West Virginia. If they would stand, and the House would help me make them welcome.
The gentleman the 26th, Doug Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have some pages from McDowell County on behalf of the McDowell County delegation. I have some Golden Knights from Mount View Middle School, and it's a pleasure to introduce them if they'd stand when I call their names. Riley Gilliam, Jayla Haggerty, Jackson Rose, Isaac Fowler, and Rihanna Hood. They are accompanied, and Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of this. They are accompanied by 5 of my former students, their parents, all up in the South Gallery. Denise Fowler, Lisa Rose, J.J. Rose, Michelle Gilliam, and John Harsani. If you'd all stand. And then they also have one grandpa that I did not teach, but I did teach his grandchildren, James Redd. His son was an incredible basketball player at Norfolk High School.
The gentleman the 19th, Doug Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Robbie Thompson and myself, I'd like to announce that we have 8 pages here serving with us today. And pages, when we announce your name, would you please stand? And these pages are from Tulsa High School in Wayne County, District 19. They are as follows: Kaylee Frazier,
Aaron Sturgill, Dylan Dawson, Zachary Walker, Zach Ramey, Taylor Workman, Jackie Meredith, Josh Jett, and Micah McCormick. House, give them a hearty welcome.
The gentleman the 19th, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, in the South Gallery, we have several civics students from Wayne High School, and they're accompanied by their teacher, Aaron Staley, and one of our school counselors, Lynetta Welker. If they would please rise and everybody give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Are there further introductions? If not, report to standing committees.
Originating in the Committee on Energy is House Bill 4957 relating to business and occupation taxes on operators of certain coal-fired electric generating units. It's reported with the recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report to be received, the bill to be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Energy has had under consideration House Bill 4610 relating to withholding tax on income of non-residents from natural resources royalty payments. It's reported with the title amendment with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report to be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 4367 adding speech pathologists to the step increase for special education teachers. House Bill 4497 requiring an external defibrillator device at any secondary school athletic event, and House Bill 4939 relating to senior citizens attending college classes at state institutions without receiving college credit. It's reported with amendment with recommendation that each do pass, that to be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and each bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2794 establishing the Summer Feeding for All initiative. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The report to be received, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration committee substitute for House Bill 4009 relating to the process for involuntary hospitalization. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 3127 relating to the Secondary School Activities Commission and participation by homeschooled students. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute to pass.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 657 allowing designation of tourism development districts. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 4853 relating to a customer constructing a connection or other infrastructure necessary for the customer to connect to the public utility. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The report to be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 4613 allowing the Division of Highways use money in the Gas Field Highway Repair and Horizontal Drilling Waste Study Fund. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute to pass.
The report to be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4530 authorizing daily passenger rental car companies to charge reasonable administrative fees. House Bill 4626 West Virginia Development Achievements Transparency Act. House Bill 4651 clarifying the powers and duties of the Division of Highways in acquiring property for state road purposes, and House Bill 4748 relating to the increase of fees that private non-government notary publics may charge for notarial acts. Reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2588 relating to occupational pneumoconiosis claims. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received under House Rule 80 be referred to Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had in consideration House Bill 4252, Board of Accountancy, Board Rules and Rules of Professional Conduct, and House Bill 4668, creating the misdemeanor crime of trespass for entering a structure that has been condemned. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and on February 18, 2020, presented to His Excellency the Governor for his action, Committee substitute for House Bill 2602, including possession of known stolen property in the offense of receiving or transferring stolen property. Committee substitute for House Bill 2924, permitting the West Virginia Tourism Office to decide to contract with the Division of Highways to sell advertising space on the WV 511 website. And committee substitute for House Bill 4129, relation to adoption.
Message to be received.
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and on February 18, 2020, presented to His Excellency the Governor for his action, House Bill 4141, requiring the Department of Administration to publish its comprehensive annual financial report by the end of December.
Message to be received.
Your
Report to be
Joint
received.
Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and on February 18, 2020, presented to His Excellency the Governor for his action, Committee substitute for Senate Bill 46, defining pepper spray and exempting from definition of deadly weapons. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 364, authorizing the Department of Transportation promulgate legislative rules. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 470, relating to use of crossbow to hunt. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 487, providing an exception that all DNR payments be deposited within 24 hours. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 500, relating to Class Y special crossbow hunting permit. And committee substitute for Senate Bill 501, adding protection, operation of North Bend Rail Trail, Greenbrier River Trail, and Elk River Trail to Parks and Recreation section of DNR.
The report will be received. Are there further reports to stay in the committees? If not, reports of select committees, messages from the executive, messages from the Senate.
The Senate has passed with amendment and its title amendment House Bill 4353, creating a rational nexus requirement between prior criminal conduct and initial licensure decision making.
The message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that House Bill 4353 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Lady from the 49th.
The purpose of House Bill 4353 was providing for a determination for an applicant for initial licensure with a prior criminal conviction that bears a rational nexus to the authorization being sought. The Senate amendment adds a code section open in another bill, House Bill 4010, adding the rational nexus language, and incorporates the two policies to avoid potential code conflict between the two bills. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move we concur with the Senate amendment.
The question before the House is the lady's motion that the House concur in the Senate amendment and titled amendment to House Bill 4353. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The House has concurred in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 4353. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4353.
Are there further amendments to the title? If not, the title as amended by the Senate and concurred in by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed without amendment House Bill 4601, relating to distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds.
Message to be received.
The Senate has concurred in the House amendments and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 544, authorizing pharmacists and pharmacy interns to administer vaccines.
Message to be received.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 572, expiring funds from general revenue and lottery net profits to various accounts.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 717, relating generally to adult protective services.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 725, supplemental appropriation of various Department of Education accounts.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 778, supplemental appropriation expiring funds from state excess lottery revenue fund to DHHR.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 779, supplemental appropriation expiring funds in state excess lottery revenue to Department of Veterans Assistance.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 780, supplemental appropriation by decreasing and adding new appropriation out of Treasury to DMAPs.
Message to be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions, petitions, motions, bills introduced, unfinished business.
House Concurrent Resolution 4, United States Marine Corps.
Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are 21 bridge naming resolutions on unfinished business and listed on the Chamber automation system. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that all resolutions on unfinished business be reported by the clerk and taken up and voted upon in mass.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that the 21 naming resolutions now pending before the House for adoption on unfinished business be taken up and considered for passage in mass. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Clerk will read the resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 4, United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal Michael Lynn Cooper Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 13, Watts Brothers Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 14, United States Army Staff Sergeant Wendell Otho Castro Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 17, United States Army Private First Class William E. Ed Smith and West Virginia Army National Guard Staff Sergeant Edward L. Eddie Smith Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 19, Gold Star Family Highways. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 20, United States Army Private First Class James Ray Miller Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 21, United States Army 4, Franklin D. Ashley II Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 32, Wolf Brothers, Edward, William, Paul, George, and Fred, World War II Veterans Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 33, United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Douglass Belknap Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 34, requesting the Division of Highways to place at least 10 additional signs along highways entering West Virginia honoring fallen veterans and Gold Star families. House Concurrent Resolution 35, United States Navy Boiler Technician Wade E. Burnside Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 38, United States Army Private First Class Now C. Ballard Memorial Road. House Concurrent Resolution 39, Coach Kenny Wright Road. House Concurrent Resolution 45, United States Army Sergeant John Matthew Tully Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 52, United States Army Private First Class Paul Eugene Gregg Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 53, United States Army Air Corps Tech Sergeant Ralph H. Ray Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 54, Private First Class Marvin K. Sonny Sherman Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 55, Pendleton County Veterans Killed in Action Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 62, United States Marine Corps Corporal Guy Maywood Edwards Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 65, United States Army Tech 5 Donald Tiny Lucas Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 70, United States Air Corps Private Alfred J. Sufin Memorial Highway.
The question before the House is the adoption of the 21 naming resolutions as just read by the clerk. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the passage or the adoption of the resolutions? If not, the question before the House is, shall the resolutions as read by the clerk be adopted? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the resolutions adopted. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House and the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Further unfinished business? If not, bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2028, limiting supervision of laying of lines on state rights of way.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of 32nd, Douglas Fast, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to prohibit the state from requiring a public service district to have a state engineer on site during the entire construction period of projects on state right-of-ways. The bill also requires the public service district to notify the municipality or county of pending construction to allow laying of high-speed internet lines. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 97 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2028.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Howell moves to amend the title.
Question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment is just read by the clerk. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and the chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that committee substitute for House Bill 2028 be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2663.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be postponed 1 day.
Lady in the 49th moves that the bill be postponed 1 day. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. Action is postponed 1 day. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4099, eliminating a permit for shampoo assistance.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of the 45th, Douglas Martin, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to repeal the law relating to shampoo assistant permits. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4099.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House. The Senate request concurrence therein. Chair is uncertain about what that exchange was. Did the gentleman from the 28th wish to seek a Rule 49 ruling on that question? If not, we'll move on. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4450, relating to instruction permits issued by Division of Motor Vehicles.
Question for the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of the 14th, Douglas Butler, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to extend the expiration time for instruction permits issued by the Division of Motor Vehicles to persons who have reached the age of 18 from 90 days to 6 months. I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4450.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4499 relating to multi-county trail network authorities.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman the 14th, Douglas Butler, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would amend certain provisions relating to multi-county trail network authorities created in 2019 and would also amend certain provisions relating to the Mountaineer Trail Network Recreation Area also created in 2019. The bill removes the user permit requirement for users of recreational areas in the multi-county trail network authority system. It expands the counties within the Mountaineer Trail Network Authority to include Doddridge, Lewis, Ritchie, Upshur, and Wood counties, and it removes the term non-commercial from the description of permitted recreational activities in the Mountaineer Trail Network recreation area, therefore allowing commercial activities such as commercial bike rentals. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 21st, Douglas Dean, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman does yield.
Yes.
Do these multi-county trail authorities, do they deal with ATVs or non-motorized vehicles?
This is all non-motorized bicycles and hiking trails.
Okay, thank you.
Do other members wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Lady from the 4th, Douglas Zukoff, your vote's not registered. The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4499.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4504 relating to renewal application requirements for individuals with permanent disabilities.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman, the 14th, Douglas Butler, is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to amend the application requirements for individuals who must renew expired special registration plates and removable windshield placards and who have a physician's certificate on file that specifies the applicant's disability is permanent. Specifically, the bill allows that an application is on file for special registration plates that includes a certificate issued by a physician, chiropractor, advanced nurse, practitioner, or physician's assistant, specifically or specifying permanent disability. No additional physician certificate is required for an application. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4504.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4537, permitting DNR to issue up to 100 permits for boats greater than 10 horsepower on Upper Mud River Lake.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman, 22nd, Douglas Maynard, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee substitute for House Bill 4537. The purpose of this bill is to have the Division of Natural Resources to issue up to 100 permits for boats with motors larger than 10 horsepower on Upper Mud River Lake, provided the boats are operating with the motor speed of an idle position. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4537.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House or the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4543 relating to insurance coverage for diabetics.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? For what purpose does the gentleman of the 27th, Douglas Schott, seek recognition?
To explain the bill in lieu of having it read in full.
Is there objection to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objection is heard. The gentleman is recognized. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to provide some context as to the reason for the bill, most recent estimates indicate that over 240,000 West Virginians are diagnosed with either type 1 or type 2 diabetes. So if you're not one of those unfortunate people, I'm sure you know someone who is. It's also estimated that another 65,000 are undiagnosed. Every West Virginian with one of those two types of, with type 1 diabetes and many with type 2 diabetes, rely on daily doses of insulin to survive. The annual medical cost related to diabetes in this state is estimated at $2.5 billion. That's billion with a B annually. Persons diagnosed with diabetes will incur medical costs approximately 2.3 times higher than persons without diabetes. The cost of insulin has increased astronomically, especially the cost of insurance co-payments, which can exceed $600 per month in many cases. Similar increases in the cost of diabetic equipment and supplies and insurance premiums has resulted in out-of-pocket costs for many West Virginians that have diabetes in excess of $1,000 per month. As a result, national reports indicate that as many as 1 in 4 type 1 diabetics underuse or ration their insulin due to these increased costs. Rationing insulin has resulted in nerve damage, diabetic comas, amputation, kidney damage, and even death. This bill has been worked extensively by 3 different committees here in the House: the Health Committee, Banking and Insurance, and ultimately the Judiciary Committee. Here's the highlights of the bill. First of all, it requires availability of 7 specific categories of prescription insulin. Insurers which are subject to this provision of the code who issue a new or renew a health insurance policy after July 1, 2020 shall provide coverage for prescription insulin drugs. The cost-sharing part of that coverage for a 30-day supply of prescription insulin drugs may not be greater than $25 for that 30-day supply, regardless of the quantity or type of the prescription insulin drug used to fulfill that person's script needs. However, nothing prevents an insurer from reducing that covered person's cost share in a greater amount, in other words, to below the $25 a day. The insurer cannot authorize or require in any contract with a pharmacy or through its PBM with a pharmacy authorizing the insurance pharmacy benefit manager or the pharmacy to charge, collect, or require an insurer to make a cost-sharing payment for a covered prescription insulin drug in an amount that exceeds that cost-sharing payment ceiling. Insurers are also required to provide coverage for specific equipment and supplies such as blood glucose monitors, monitor supplies, insulin injection aids, syringes, insulin infusion devices, pharmacological agents for controlling blood sugar, and orthotics. There's also a provision requiring diabetes self-management education. Also, a healthcare provider must provide an appeals process for persons not able to take the designated prescription insulin drugs, and they're also required to dispense education. There's a provision to require the DHHR to implement legislative rules, and those rules will be after the consultation with the Coalition for Diabetes Management. There's a provision dealing with the Department of Administrative Purchasing, which gives them the ability to negotiate a price that's less or equal to the publicly available list price of insulin on July 1, 2006, and that would allow the purchasing division to dispense with the requirement to negotiate rebates in order to maintain that lower price. And finally, the PEIA is prohibited from or is required in any provisions for contracts negotiated after July 1 of this year. They must contain the same provisions with respect to the cost-sharing limit. Mr. Speaker, that is a summary of the bill. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman please yield?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Could you please identify the insurers that are subject to the listed sections of code?
Yes. The last provision brings in the PEIA. There's approximately just under 50,000 PEIA retirees, and there's approximately 163,000 active individuals. There's also private insurers who would be governed by this, about 197,000, just over 197,000 covered by this. It does not cover self-insured plans that are governed by ERISA, which are federal law, and Medicare or Medicaid, which has their own provisions capping the cost-sharing provision with regard to insulin.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Only 2 lights are on at this point, and at this time, the chair would take this opportunity to say the number of members have already approached the chair leading up to the vote on this bill, seeking a ruling by the chair under Rule 49. The chair would ask at this time, we'll go ahead and dispense with that. If you wish a ruling by the chair under Rule 49 on the basis of you or a family member are a user of an insulin or an insulin product covered by this bill, please ring in with your recognition light now so the clerk can take you down. Okay, clerk will turn off all lights, or members will do so. The gentleman, the 27th, Douglas Ellington, is recognized.
For Rule 49.
Lady in the 51st, Douglas Fleshour is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a really happy day. I am so glad that we have gotten here. This is a really important bill, and I am so grateful to the chairs of the 3 committees, the chair of insurance, the chair of health, who started this journey out with me, and the chair of judiciary. All 3 committees were critical in helping improve this bill. People in our state are being bankrupted by these costs. People are losing their retirement insurance or their retirement savings, and young people in other states have died because of the enormous increase in the cost of copays. Most of us who are not diabetic and have insurance, 90% of West Virginians have insurance, our copay's like 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 for some fancy thing, but these people are paying $500 a month, many of them. And they take more than one kind of insulin, and they need it to survive. And it's so weird because insulin was discovered almost exactly, we're just under a year or 2 under 100 years ago. And the persons who invented it gave the patent to the University of Toronto for $1, and they said that nobody should profit off of a life-saving medication. So we are at a wonderful point. I want to thank the chairs, the sponsors of all the various versions of the bills, and the advocates, people that went to Canada. The cost is 1/10 in Canada. There's no reason why it shouldn't be here. We modeled our bill from other states, but I have to tell you, I think our bill could be the best bill in the country. Please join me in pushing the green button for something that could really help the many people in our state. We may be number one when it comes to diabetes who could benefit from this, and to make things a little fairer for people who didn't choose to be diabetic. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Chair's just realized we turned off all the lights, but the chair did not actually make a ruling under Rule 49. It would be the ruling of the chair that all those members who sought a ruling of the chair under Rule 49 on the basis that you or a family member are a user of an insulin product covered by this bill would be a member of a class far greater than 5 and therefore are directed to vote. For what purpose does the gentleman of the 34th, Douglas Boggs, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A separate ruling. Rule
yes,
49.
the gentleman has sought a separate ruling under Rule 49 under a different set of factual circumstances the gentleman is affiliated with. An insurer that potentially is impacted by the bill would be the same ruling of the chair. The gentleman would be a member of class of greater than 5 and therefore should vote. The gentleman of the 30th, Douglas Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually have a question for the chair, if you would mind yielding. But before I do that, the gentlelady thanked everybody, but I need to thank the gentlelady for her advocacy and tenacity in seeing this bill across the line. I mean, there's a lot of people in this room that worked on this, but she is the one that really is the driving force behind this. So she thanked everybody else, but we need to thank her for that. Would the chair yield very quickly for a question?
Sure.
Thank you. So in your description, you said that this didn't apply to Medicaid. Would it apply to Medicaid managed care companies, private companies that insure our Medicaid population, the coverage provisions, not necessarily the cost-sharing provisions?
It's my understanding is if they're providing a federally insured benefit, then this bill would not affect them. Federal law would, but I understand that most of those are required to provide a relatively low cost sharing.
Yeah, not the cost sharing, but just the coverage, the coverage elements of that. The cost sharing, I understand that would be different, but the bill contains a number of provisions that expand the things that are covered for a diabetic.
Right, the supplies and so forth?
Yes, yes.
I don't think so, but I really would not. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 43rd, Douglas Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I speak to the bill?
Yes, gentleman is recognized.
I just want to reiterate to the gentlelady, we all owe you a massive amount of gratitude for all the work you have put into this bill and organizing. In my district, I have a family who are school service personnel, and they have a daughter who has developed, her body has rejected the other insulins, and they are paying upwards of $15,000 a year for their daughter's insulin. This is the only insulin that is available that she can take. And I've heard the struggles of what these children are going through and what the parents and the pleads to please help us. And this, I have to also thank the Health Committee Chairman and Vice Chair and everybody who has been instrumental in getting this passed. It has been something we need, and I'm so ecstatic that we have been able to do this in a bipartisan manner, and I urge passage.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Only a small percentage of the bills that we take up in here can save a life. This is one. Vote green.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On the question, there are 94 ayes, 4 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4543.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be in remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4620, redefining definition of recovery residence.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of the 41st, Douglas Hill, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill clarifies that even if a building is a certified recovery residence, that the building code and fire code still apply. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4620.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Hill moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment as just read by the clerk. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4714, increasing the monetary threshold for requiring nonprofit organizations to register as a charitable organization.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman with 56, Douglas Howell, is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to be consistent with the United States Internal Revenue Service by increasing the allowable amounts of contributions, donations, or grants that can be received by nonprofit organizations from $25,000 to $50,000 before the organization must register as a charitable organization. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4714.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4734, rewriting the article on registered professional nurses.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of the 41st, Douglas Hill, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill modernizes the Nursing Practice Act. This is the exact same version that was adopted by the House in 2019 and almost the same as 2018. There are several sections within the Board of Registered Nursing article which have not been updated since 1965. Of specific concern are the board's disciplinary sections. The majority of this bill is not changed from current law. It is all underlined because sections have been removed around to conform to our current Chapter 30 board format. The significant policy changes in the bill include the bill changes the name of the board to the Board of Registered Nurses. This board regulates APRNs, RNs, and dialysis technicians. The bill adds members to the board. The bill standardizes powers, duties, and rulemaking. The bill removes all fees from the statutes, and that authority is moved to the rulemaking section. A scope practice section is added for RNs and APRNs, but nothing is added to their practices. Additionally, there are no changes to an APRN's collaborative practice or prescribing authority. Finally, the board's complaint and disciplinary procedure is updated to the current format and standards. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman of the 35th, Douglas Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman, yield for one quick question. I had a question from a constituent. Does this affect the continuing education? And if so, is the information in this bill put on the Board of Nursing website? So if there are any updates, is there a requirement that it be put on the website? That's it.
No, it doesn't affect the continuing education. But as for updates on the website, nothing's required under this. I don't understand this question.
Can you expand on, or restate your question on the education?
Yeah, I think in part of the bill they're adding requirements or rules to be promulgated for continuing education, and the question I received was if there are any continuing education additional requirements or education requirements, is that going to be posted on the Board of Nursing's website? I think I'm clear.
Process.
There would be public notice because it has to do with the rulemaking process.
It will be on there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes and 0 nays and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4734.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4773, creating a workshop to investigate and recommend screening protocols for adverse childhood trauma in this state.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman from the 41st, Douglas Hill, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to create a work group to investigate and recommend screening protocols for adverse childhood experiences. It designates members of the work group, provides for their duties, and states that the Bureau of Public Health shall provide staff. The findings of this work group would be used to strengthen the partnership between primary care practitioners and community-based non-medical services. This work group will help the state's opioid response plan by screening and by developing protocols regarding the clinical response that medical providers should follow after screening in order to mitigate ACEs. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The lady from the 4th, Douglas Zukoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very briefly, I just want to thank those who have been involved in this process. And this is a really important bill because our children are in crisis. Many of our children are in crisis in West Virginia. And this will allow us to develop protocols specifically for West Virginia children to receive the help they need. If ACEs aren't dealt with in a positive manner, it can impact those children's lives with poor health for the rest of their lives. So we can work together to get this to happen now, or we're going to be paying for their poor health outcomes for the rest of their lives. I think it's the right thing to do, and I appreciate everybody voting green today. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. I didn't vote. Now the clerk will close the machine. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4773.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate, request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 209, relating to annexation by minor boundary adjustment.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 339, authorizing DHHR promulgate legislative rules.
Are there amendments?
Committee on Judiciary moves to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, line 25, subsection E, following the word authorized by striking out the period and inserting a comma, and the following, with the following amendments. On page 4, striking...
Chair recognizes the gentleman at 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain Delegate Pack to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Are there objections? The chair has no objections.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Judiciary Committee amendment makes a number of clarifying amendments to include updating the definition of medical cannabis, makes a number of amendments to how long video surveillance must be kept for growers, reducing that from 4 years to 2 years, and it also updates the forms of medical cannabis to include dry leaf or plant form. Mr. Speaker, I urge its adoption.
The question before the House is adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman the 28th. The gentleman the 15th, Douglas Foster.
Just a question of does the chair yield or vice chair yield?
Certainly.
So the amendment, the dry leaf form was not in the original?
That's correct.
But then it was added in in this amendment?
Yes.
So the dry leaf cannabis being added in is something that if I vote down this amendment, it would not be in there?
It's correct.
All right, thank you.
Do other members wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, then the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman the 28th. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes appear to have it. Division's been demanded. Roll call's been demanded. Is demand sustained? Demand is sustained. Those in favor, the question now before the House then is the adoption of the amendment as explained by the gentleman from the 28th, Doug Pack. Those in favor of adoption of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On the question, there are 74 ayes, 23 nays, 3 members absent, not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments?
Delegate Pack moves to amend the bill on page 3, line 25, by striking the word center.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? The gentleman 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment merely strikes out the word center that was inadvertently included in the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4015 relating to broadband enhancement and expansion.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the bill on page 10, section 6A, line 5, immediately following the word code by inserting a period and striking the remainder of the section.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. Are there members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, then those in favor of adoption of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4039, providing limitations on nuisance actions against fire department and emergency medical services.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Jeffries moves to amend the bill on page 1, section 55732, line 7, by inserting a period after the word siren, striking the words, if the fire department or emergency medical services station siren was installed prior to the date the person acquired the property, and inserting in lieu thereof the words, provided that from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. a fixed siren shall only activate for weather-related emergencies or to alert the public of other hazardous conditions where life may be in danger or failure of the alert system used to call out first responders. On page 1, section 55732.
The gentleman 22nd, Doug Jeffries, is recognized. Does the gentleman wish to explain the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Though my amendment had
None
good
are heard.
intentions, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment.
The gentleman wishes unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. That amendment will be withdrawn. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4422, the Patient Brokering Act.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4514, permitting the use of leashed dogs to track mortally wounded deer.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Atkinson moves to amend the bill on page 1 after the enacting
The
clause.
gentleman 11th, Doug Atkinson. Does the gentleman wish to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read?
Yes, thank
Are
you,
there
Mr.
objections?
Speaker.
None are heard. Gentleman may proceed.
All this proposed amendment would do is to amend 20-2-22 to reference new language permitting leashed dogs for tracking mortally wounded deer or bear. I urge passage.
The question before the House then is the adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman from the 11th. Are there members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4529, relating to the collection of assessments and the priority of liens on property within a resort area.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4589, conducting study for an appropriate memorial for West Virginians killed in the War on Terror.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4593, authorizing the assignment of poll workers to serve more than one precinct under certain circumstances.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4594, allowing poll workers be appointed to work in precincts outside their county.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4697, removing the restriction that many distilleries use raw agricultural products originating in the same premises.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4747, extending electronic submission of various applications and forms for nonprofit and charitable organizations, professionals, and licensees.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4749, providing more efficient application processes for private investigators.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4777, relating to the right of disposition of remains.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4852.
Are there amendments?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be postponed one day.
Lady from the 49th moves that action be postponed one day. Those in favor of the lady's motion will say aye. Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. Action is postponed one day. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4864, relating to performance reviews of state agencies and regulatory boards.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4865, requiring certain boards that seek to increase a fee or seek to impose a new fee to also submit cost-saving measures.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4956, relating generally to the partition of real property.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Senate Bill 573, supplementing, amending, and increasing appropriation of public monies for claims against the state.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 623, allowing non-citizen of U.S. be eligible for teaching certificate.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2321.
Bill will be advanced. Next bill on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2321, allowing workers' compensation benefits for first responders diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3098, allowing the same business owners to brew and sell beer to also distill and sell liquor.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4363, establishing the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources Police Officer Retirement System.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4408, requiring the State Board of Education to develop and implement online database for the employment of school principals.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4452, modifying the notice requirements for the redemption of delinquent properties.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4474, relating to peer-to-peer car sharing programs.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4522, allowing division to accept documents compliant with Real ID Act for proof of identity.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4523, removing the limitation of number of apprentice hunting and trapping licenses a person may purchase.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4557, relating to centers and institutions that provide the care and treatment of mentally ill or intellectually disabled individuals.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4634, Southern West Virginia Lake Development Study Commission Act.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4645, establishing the Office of Regulatory and Fiscal Affairs under the Joint Committee on Government Finance.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4737, clarifying student eligibility for state-sponsored financial aid.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4820, relating to inventory of firearms owned by state agencies.
Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for our colleagues Jay Kelly and Hornbuckle.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? The chair hears no objections. Leave shall be granted. Remarks by members? Remarks by members. The lady from the 3rd, Delegate Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we heard from all the legislators that represent the 50th the impact that they are seeing the closure of Fairmont Regional Medical Center having on their districts. I just wanted to stand up and bring to all of my colleagues' attention some things that weren't mentioned yesterday. As everyone in here knows, Electo, the parent company that owned Fairmont, also owned East Ohio Regional, which was located in Martins Ferry, Ohio. But I assure you, Delegate Fluharty and myself, Delegate Canestraro and Zukoff, also had several constituents that were employed at that location, as well as Ohio Valley Medical Center, which was in the south end of Wheeling. What I think is not really taken into consideration is the impact that this closure will have on any and all of our county sheriffs. Our sheriff's departments are required by the code for mental hygiene transports. So if you were a resident that was, or a person or whatever, that was in Ohio County, just by virtue of whatever led you to be there. Maybe you were going to OV seeking service and you didn't realize they'd closed. Maybe you were homeless and you were just on the streets and you knew that we had a great support team in the Ohio County area. Well, Ohio County Sheriff's deputies are now responsible for transporting you. And now Ohio County has lost one receiving opportunity in Fairmont. Our deputies are telling us that they may be given a gentleman or a lady that has a 2-hour colostomy bag with instruction that in 2 hours they're going to have to pull over and change that bag. Our sheriff's deputies don't have this training to know how to properly handle that type of situation. Our sheriff's deputies' budgets are blown because now, with the removal of Fairmont, the transports will go to Beckley, Charleston, Huntington, and those are a lot further than 2 hours, the 2 hours they could get to Fairmont. So I just want all my colleagues to think it's a lot larger problem. My heart breaks for my colleagues in the 50th. My heart really does, because while we have had a great influx of people, various health providers in the region have hired on many of the staff. Some of them are commuting to WVU to work at the Ruby in Morgantown, which is wonderful that they're able to be picked up to have their livelihood still sustained. But beyond that, there are people that have lost their seniority. You know, I was speaking with one of my firefighters who said, yeah, my wife got a job at Trinity, which is just across the border in Jefferson County, Ohio, in the Steubenville area. He was very glad for his wife to have employment because she spent a lot of her educational career in securing that knowledge so that she could be gainfully employed in the medical industry. But he said, but we lost her seniority. She lost all her vacation time. She's starting over. We have a new issue with childcare. I mean, there are so many ripple effects that are going to impact so many of our communities. And I would encourage every one of my colleagues that may have a border or whatever, Marion County, to just have a conversation with your sheriff's deputies to find out the impact that this will have on them. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 59th, Delegate Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night I received a telephone call, as usual, from my bodaciously beautiful wife, Cheryl, and she shared something with me that I thought was worthy to share to the rest of you. She very diligently watches the televised broadcast of the proceedings of the House of Delegates. And she told me that yesterday she was watching, and our other companion in our house, Bodacious Bob, the wonder dog, doesn't have a whole lot of interest in these televised broadcasts, which doesn't surprise me, with one exception. Cheryl tells me that whenever the distinguished delegate from District 1, sitting behind me, speaks, Bob stops everything and glues his attention on that distinguished delegate, and then immediately goes on to other things when the delegate stops speaking. I thought that was worthy of attention and just a little creepy. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 50th, Delegate Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to follow up on my comments from yesterday about Fairmont Regional Medical Center. Delegates Caputo, Longstreth, and I were dealing with this in real time. This caught us completely out of the blue. And let me tell you why. During our meetings with management from Electo, our last meeting, they gave us a booklet of different options that they were working on to keep our hospital open. One option was they were going to create a new board of directors and they could transform the hospital from a for-profit to a non-profit and allow community leaders to operate the hospital through the board of directors. The same structure that they had in 2012 before Electo purchased Fairmont Regional. They assured us in that meeting they were not going to close our hospital. These were the options. They were not going to close. Out of the middle of nowhere, they decide they're going to close. The same thing they did in Wheeling. 600 people are worried about their health insurance for their kids, for their spouses, for themselves. But let me tell you why I'm angry. Let's talk about Electo Healthcare. They were formed in 2012, and in 8 years, they've now closed 3 hospitals. Let me give you a little insight. Antelope Valley Hospital, a 420-bed hospital in Lancaster, California, has filed a lawsuit against Irvine, California-based Electo Healthcare Services, alleging Electo engaged in egregious malfeasance and or outright fraud in its management of Antelope Valley Hospital. Electo managed Antelope Valley Hospital from November 2015 until December 2016, when the hospital board of directors voted to terminate the management agreement with Electo. The hospital alleges that soon after the management agreement was signed, Electo made changes that caused financial troubles for the hospital. Antelope Valley Hospital claims Electo slashed the hospital's nursing staff, mismanaged the hospital's IT processes, and botched the management of essential hospital equipment, all in the name of cutting cost. While making these moves, Electo was, quote, funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the hospital to a closely associated advisor for a line of credit the hospital did not actually need, unquote. Antelope Valley Hospital claims Electo's actions caused the hospital to lose more than $30 million. So we've seen what their motive is. They buy hospitals, they funnel the money, and they close them down. We've seen it at East Ohio Regional, we saw it at Ohio Valley Medical Center, now we're seeing it at Fairmont. That's why today, Delegates Caputo, Longstreth, and I, who have been working around the clock, have drafted a letter to our Attorney General asking him to open a full investigation to the business practices of Electo Healthcare. Our people, our employees, and the people, the citizens of Fairmont and Marion County deserve that. A private company from California is coming in here and putting the health care of the citizens of Marion County in jeopardy. Our economic future, and also the 600 people that's going to be losing their jobs. So we hope the Attorney General opens this investigation, and we hope that we can hold the people of Electo, their management team, responsible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The lady with 32nd, Douglas Stagger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On your desk, I better explain what I put there. That's my initials, ST. There is a proliferation of legislative and government interference with emergency care. These are the questions that if you came in with some swelling of your ankles, that you would have to answer before you could even get through triage. You'll see there's 4 pages. We haven't updated it from Ebola to the new challenge from China, but there's all the questions, and this continues on with what you need to do in the emergency department before you actually take care of a patient that's there for pain, whatever, and to be managed. There are more and more forms that we spend time trying to find out where is that form Where did we put that? Who are we going to? We have to transfer patients to admit them. There's a different form for everything. There was a day when an emergency physician and an emergency nurse could actually take care of a patient, document what they did, and that was it. Now we spend time answering interesting questions that probably have nothing to do with care. I would argue for the simplification of health care, the cutting down on the excess, that making it easier to actually care for people. There are some of us that are older and remember the good old days when you could actually care for a patient and not worry about what happens next, like closing hospitals, like increasing prices and not knowing what's going to happen next, like surprise billing. Just look through these. You don't even need to read them. You understand that there's nurses right now handling 60 to 70 patients a day asking all these questions before they can even be seen by a provider. And a lot of these are legislative mandates. So call your doctor's office today. See if the first thing they say is, if you're sick, go to the ER. Don't come to the office. Help us out. Make the actual providers of health care a little bit easier to actually provide health care. Thank you.
The gentleman the 13th, I got Cadle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to explain to you guys our hospital's in trouble too. Our local hospital, Pleasant Valley in Mason County. They just laid off 50 people. And I'm not I don't know much about the health insurance and stuff, but what I'm told, Obamacare, this is finally trickling down to all the small hospitals, and it's going to end up closing most of them. They've lost 13 doctors. It used to be a big place. They had beds upstairs, downstairs, and now they're just, I don't know, they're down to 50 beds or whatever. And one of my friends is a doctor down there, a private practice, and it has gotten so bad. He's like 68 years old, okay? So he's got most of his stuff paid off. And he said that's the only way he could be in business now. And he has 11 people working for him. But the problem is Medicare, Medicaid in our area. Most people, that's all they have. And that pays about 80% of the hospital bill. So then the hospital has to eat 20%. And you can't sustain that loss for very long. And that's basically what's happening to all these hospitals. So anyway, I don't know how we can fix it, but we need to take a good look at it, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The gentleman third, Dr. Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just ask for unanimous consent that the eloquent words by my colleague from the 3rd be printed in the appendix in the journal, as well as the eloquent words by the gentleman from the 50th.
Are there objections? None are heard. Introduction of guests. Any miscellaneous business? Lady of the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Thursday.
Lady of the 49th has moved that subject to announcements. The House adjourns until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? The gentleman the 10th, I got Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet at 2 p.m. in the House Finance Committee room. The Republican members will meet in the chairman's office 15 minutes before the meeting.
Lady in the 49th, Dr. Summers.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet at 10:45 tomorrow behind the chamber.
The gentleman the 35th, Dr. Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on the Judiciary will resume work on the posted agenda today at 2:15 in the committee room. And tomorrow morning there is a public hearing in this chamber at 8:30 tomorrow morning to discuss the merits of House Bill 4176. The committee will not meet tomorrow morning. Please stay advised for our announcement tomorrow on the floor session for our evening meeting tomorrow, as that will depend on when we wrap up on the floor. Thank you.
The gentleman the 13th, Dr. Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet today at 3 p.m. in the Education Committee room, and the agenda is posted.
The gentleman the 45th, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your
The Republican members of your Committee on Government Organization will caucus at 5 p.m. in the chairman's office, and your Committee on Government Organization will meet in the House Government Organization Committee room at 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 53rd, Delegate Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Fire and EMS will meet immediately after the session in the House Finance. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 15th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your subcommittee on House Bill 4717 will meet at 2 o'clock in the House Judiciary room, and that's Delegates Pushkin, Kelly, Steele, and Miller. Should be a real quick meeting just to approve agreed to change to in the subcommittee.
The gentleman of 62nd, Delegate Bibby.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your subcommittee for considering House resolution on a call to end periods of endless war will meet at 1:30 in the Judiciary room. The members of the subcommittee are Delegates Kump, Phillips, Lovejoy, and Nate Brown. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 8th, Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 1st, Delegate Schwartzmiller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There'll be a labor caucus today following the fourth session in GovOrg, and lunch will be provided.
The gentleman of the 42nd, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements. First, the WVEA and WVSSPA Education Brunch will be tomorrow morning at 9:30 in GovOrg, and everyone is welcome. Also, to everyone who participated in the legislative basketball game, please come down the front after we finish up here for a group photo for the winning basketball raffle that goes to the Norma May Huggins Cancer Research Fund. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is the motion that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.